Hey guys, today is another episode of Bitcoin Belgium. Today I want to provide you a market update from last week because we actually had, as you probably know, a pretty insane week. The weekly candle for Bitcoin um, is around the 22%. I mean, we also had a candle like this in the beginning of January, but before that, it's actually a long time ago. So that's actually really nice to experience that such a high weekly candle. So yeah, I think it was important to give you guys an update because I think some things have changed the past week, and that's what I want to discuss today. So today we're going discussing Bitcoin, technical analysis of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the S&P 500. So for Bitcoin, because of this weekly candle, we are now back above the 200-week MA, which is a very important level for BTC. The 200-week MA is at this moment around 25k, and we actually blasted above the 25k level. Um, the 200 week usually is a really important level for BTC. Most of the time, it actually is a kind of support. We tested it in March 2020. We tested it at in the end of 2018 and the beginning of 2019, and usually that were pretty good rallies after that. The only time when it actually wasn't a good test was in August of 2022, where we actually broke down below the 200 week. So I think that's something we need to keep an eye on. Are we going to test it and then maybe blast further, or are we just going to chop around and maybe break down below? Um, Interesting things to keep in mind. But it's very good that we actually blasted through the 200-week MA. We actually also went above the 50-week MA, and we were actually rejecting off the 50-week for a couple of weeks. Actually, for whole February, we were actually rejecting of those levels, but now we are far above it. So I think we need to see what happens next. Yeah, now we're actually pretty far away from the 300 week. We almost tested it last week, but yeah, now we're far above it. There's actually also a big amount of volume coming in this week. As you can see, the volume bars are pretty high. I mean, the last time we had such high volume bars is from the week that FTX collapsed. So much volume coming in. I think it's also important to look at the daily time frame because we can actually see some nice tests back there. So as I told you guys last week, that it is important to keep that 19k level, 19.4k level in mind because that's where the 200-day MA is. So we actually tested that level. We actually went to that level, which is pretty good. We tested it and then we just blasted off it. So a really nice test, in my opinion. Something I think very good for the markets. But actually, when was the last time we broke above that 200-day? Yeah, we broke above it here, but we didn't tested it. Here we got rejected of it, so that's why the 200-day is actually a pretty important level. Yeah, we tested it here, but it wasn't that good of a test. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that's also a pretty bullish sign for the market. Um, as you can see, we got a nice test of the 200-day moving average. And we're now at the 27k levels, so BTC is up around 40% in just a couple of days actually. So it's pretty ridiculous and pretty nice to see. Um, possible factors. I think, yeah, that retest is pretty important, but also um, the Federal Reserve balance sheet has increased again instead of decreased. Maybe I think also, and it's actually maybe a thing to watch for because of some banks are um, in problems right now around the world. Maybe some people decide to flee to BTC for maybe some kind of safety. I think that's also one of the important factors these days. And now let's take a look at Ethereum. I mean, with Ethereum, you can see actually pretty the same. I told you guys, look for that 1400 level. Last week I told you guys that, and actually we had this support line around here, and we also got this support line for BTC, which we broke down below, but then we just blasted through it. For Ethereum, we did actually just the same. We were testing this line for a lot of days in 2023, but then we broke down below, we tested the 200 day, and then we just blasted off it. I mean, we tested it and we just blast off the levels. So I think it's a pretty good thing, and it's also some nice thing um, to see. And now let's take a look at the weekly candles for Ethereum. Um, yeah, we're above that. We actually got a nice test, maybe as you can see, of the 200 week to that 1400 level, and then we just also blast above the 50 week, which we were rejecting from through the whole of February. So that's nice that we're also above those levels. Then I think what is important to look for is it, are we going to break out, so maybe to the 2000 levels, I don't know, or is it a situation like this where we broke above it, but then we broke down below it afterwards a couple of weeks. So I think that's also some um, things to keep in mind. But it's nice to see the market actually doing some nice rally. Okay, so I think that's the most important things for Ethereum and BTC. I think it's also important to keep in mind what the S&P 500 is doing because they're actually pretty correlated, the S&P 500 and BTC and Ethereum. We actually saw this week a big amount of volume coming in. As you can see, the volume bars are pretty high. The only thing that pretty concerns me is that still this week we closed down that famous trend line. I mean, we went above it in January. We actually tested it a bit, but now this last week we actually got rejected of it. So I think that's maybe not a good of a sign, but maybe if there is some kind of decoupling happening between BTC and between crypto and the S&P 500, it is something interesting to watch for, I think. So maybe if the S&P keeps dropping down, like in the dot-com crash, because this blue pattern is actually the dot-com crash. If it keeps dropping down, I think BTC, Bitcoin, and Ethereum are going to have, and crypto are going to have a hard time. But maybe we see some kind of decoupling for the coming months. So, I mean, interesting time, guys. I think it are some really interesting times. It's nice to see a rally of Bitcoin and Ethereum. Um, Actually, if you take a look at ETH BTC, you can actually see that at this moment BTC is actually outperforming most altcoins and Ethereum, with the dominance of BTC going higher. Um, yeah, it's Ethereum Bitcoin is down 8% this week, so I think it's also an important things to keep in mind. But because of this recent rally, I want to take a look at the RSIs for Bitcoin and Ethereum. So now let's take a look at that. So yeah, here we have the RSI levels for BTC. For the weekly, it is around 62. I mean, the last time we had a weekly RSI of 62, it has been from the time um, we were at the 60K level. So I think it's pretty remarkable that we are at those levels again. I mean, almost the all-time high, really. Um, so that's one thing I think about the RSI. Don't take it to the bank. Only know um, what it means short term, etc. And now let's take a look at the daily RSI. Daily RSI is around 69, is slightly oversold value if you believe the RSI. But for example, the RSI can actually really trick you because um, at the middle of January, we had an RSI of around 90. As you can see, extremely oversold, but we chopped around for a couple of days and then we actually went higher. So the RSI is lower, but the price levels are higher. So don't let the RSI trick you guys. And now we're in that slightly oversold territory. Now let's take a look for Ethereum. Yeah, we're seeing actually the same around that 60, 65, 70. Sorry for the adverts. Around the 65, 70 RSI levels. For the weekly, what does it say? For the weekly, it's actually pretty kind of middle grounds around the 58. Kind of level, so not extremely oversold like in February 2021, etc., which are long times ago. That's the current state of the market. I think it's pretty good to see some kind of nice relief in 2023 for the crypto markets. Um, so I hope you guys have a fine day, and that's all for today, guys. Goodbye.